Okay, so today we're going to actually put together our gear assembly. And if you notice down at the bottom, I have a 3-inch diameter gear, 1.5-inch diameter gear, and I created one bearing. Some of you might have the exact same pieces, some of you might have some that are a little different. Either way, you need to click on Insert and put in both of your gears and then put in 2 bearings. Why do you need 2 bearings? Is because you have 2 gears, so you need to put them in, okay? Right now, if you notice, none of them are constrained, but similar to what we kind of mentioned before, we need to always, our first step is we need to fix one of our parts, and we will be fixing a bearing, but before we do that, I'm going to fasten my bearing to the origin. Why? Because I think it's important to kind of fix things to the origin so that we can have a good reference point as to where things are located in the space given, meaning kind of like the graphics area. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first. I'm going to click on this Fasten Mate tool. I'm going to go over here towards our origin, and if you notice, either the mate connector, which is that disc, is facing horizontal flat, or I move my mouse and it's facing up. I'm going to have it face horizontal flat, and I'm going to click on that. And why? Because I'm going to select now the bottom of this bearing. I'm going to zoom in so I can see a little bit better, in this whole bottom face. Okay, and just make sure that's on the center, and it looks like it's in the center. Yep. Click to make that stay, and if you notice, if I kind of zoom out, click on my view cube at the corner to get that isometric view, and that looks great. So I'm going to click on green check. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to close the Fasten tool, is I'm actually going to go ahead and fix this by right-clicking on it and clicking on Fix. Now, if you notice when I do that, this Fasten Mate turns red, and the reason being is because we fixed it. So that's technically kind of interfering with the Fasten Mate. So right now, I actually don't need the Fasten Mate anymore. So I'm going to right click and delete it. Why? Because this is fixed. I went ahead, and you can even see the icon over there. So I just used that Fasten Mate right here to set it up and to locate it and orientate it, and meaning the view, how I want it to look. Okay, now the next step. I'm going to go ahead and fasten my larger gear to this bearing. So in order to do that though, I'm going to use a nice little trick to kind of rotate this, because right now, if you notice, I need this gear to turn 90 degrees, right? So that it looks like it will fit nicely in there. So to do that, I'm going to click on this face. And if you notice, these axes kind of turn up. Remember the degrees of freedom? Okay, everyone see that? So I'm going to go ahead and use this top one here, this degree of freedom, and rotate it so that it becomes flat. And if you notice, the little box pops open, and it says 45 degrees. I want it to turn 90 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and type right in 90 and hit enter. And it flipped it 90 degrees. And that looks good. So I'll click in the space and hit enter so that it fully turned it. And I'm going to double check. It's perfect. Look at that now. When I try to move it, it's in that same plane. So now I'm going to go ahead and use this cylindrical mate. Or actually, I can directly use the Revolut Mate. I don't need to do the cylindrical mate. I can just use the Revolut. Click on that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select. See how it, I went to the cylinder, and if you notice, if I turn, that mate connector, that disc, is in the center of that cylinder. Let's see if this one works. It might be kind of hard to select it on the other one, but you can do it that way. So move it. If I can find that again, there's a cylinder. That's the middle. Okay. If you click on that one, then what that means is on your bearing over here, the one that's fastened. I'm going to zoom in. I need to select the cylinder, but the center point of that as well. Why? Because then those 2 mate connectors will connect together. So click on it. And if you notice, there it went. I'm going to zoom out just to get a good preview and kind of rotate it to see it a little bit. Move that out of the way. Awesome. That looks pretty good. Nice. So I'm going to go ahead and click the green check to confirm. And looks great. And again, you can tell it's in the middle because the gear, there's a little gap here and there's also a little gap on the middle, okay? And let's just verify that it moves. Remember, the whole point of this Revolut Mate is that it changes the degrees of freedom so that it will rotate. And perfect, this gear is now rotating around that bearing when I turn it. Awesome. And this bearing still won't move because it's fixed. So awesome. Good step so far. Okay. Our next step is we need to kind of start to orientate to these two pieces, right? So there's a few things we need to think about. One, if I look at the top view, you want these to be lined up, meaning this bearing needs to be lined up so that it can properly fit this smaller gear. Okay, I also need to rotate that smaller gear. So let's first rotate the smaller gear and then try to kind of dimension and space things out. All right, so I'm going to click on that face again. Remember, those axes come up. Just zoom in. You'll start to get used to kind of how the axes are. This, you can even play with it. Oh, it goes that way or that way. Nope. Let's change that. Keep that back at 0 degrees. Wrong direction. I want to choose this degree of freedom. I'm going to rotate it. Again, I'm just going to type in 90 because that's what I want it to move. There we go. Click once on the outside to finish that move. There we go. So now they are kind of on parallel planes, but if you notice, if I kind of click on this front view, this can go up and down, right? And over and this, and we need it to line up perfectly. So I'm going to do a few things. And even the same thing with this, right? The bearing, we want to make sure that it's lined up perfectly, and we want to make sure it's spaced out perfectly. You can use the measurement tool and kind of do some measurements. I'll show you another way that I kind of like doing it, which is we're going to actually use a new mate tool. This tool right here, this is called a planar mate. And what that does is it causes two planes to mate together so that they are nice, flat, and even. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to use a planar mate. I'm going to use this top part of this bearing. So I'm going to click on that. And then I want that to be in line or on the same plane as the top part of this bearing. So there we go. Now let's zoom out to make sure it's there. And I think it actually joined it here. So don't worry, click on the green check. I'm going to go over here, close this planar mate window. I'm going to go here. I'm going to click and hold and pull that other one out if it is there somewhere. See if we can find it. Should be in there. It is. Okay. So that's the one thing that does happen that just be careful of, is sometimes it will be or appear that it's on top. So just click on it and try to move it, and then it came out. But if you notice, the nice thing is it's going to stay. I can't move it up or down. It's going to stay on the same plane, which is what we want, right? That's a very critical part to these gears. Okay. And the next step that we want to do is I would like to use that Revolut Mate to constrain, again, the center of that gear with the center of the bearing. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. And when I zoom in, I need to find that center of the gear, and there's that center point as well. So I'll click there. And I'm going to go over to our bearing and kind of zoom in here. Find the center point there, click to make it stay, green check to confirm, and just to kind of zoom out, and then close that window, let's go ahead and try to rotate that. Good. What's tricky though is you can't really tell fully. Why? Because this is not fixed, so this whole thing is moving. So not only is that gear moving around that center axis, but it's also moving around the entire space because I didn't constrain it. So that's going to be our next step. How do we constrain them so that it does not kind of move around that way. Eventually, we're going to basically end up fixing this one, okay? So to do that, again, if I look at the front view, the nice thing is they're still on the same plane, so they're lined up, okay? So I'm going to click here. I'm going to look at this top view. Why? Because I'm going to use this tool right over here called tangent. Why am I going to use this? Because that tangent, you can have two curved surfaces line up. Okay, so I'm going to click on this. I'm going to click on this curved edge, and I'll even kind of rotate now so I can see a little bit better. I want that inner curved edge, right, to line up to this outer edge, right? Because you want this groove of that tooth to go in towards that piece. So click on that. And if you notice, it moved them in. Green check. Now it's still going to move, and I'll kind of show you what happens. Everyone see how this will still move, and you can actually rotate it and spin it around. So technically, some gears do work that way, right? This is kind of what we kind of call a planetary, but because it's rotating around like a planet, right? But we want this to be stationary. So now that we're spaced correctly with it, I'm just going to click on that top view. I'm just going to rotate it around, make sure it's in the right spot, and I'm also going to kind of line up the gears. And it looks about there that they're pretty good. That looks great. So now that I have that where I would like it, I'm going to go ahead, rotate it. I'm going to click on that bearing, and I'm going to right click it over here in the features list, and I'm going to also fix that one. Okay. Now again, if you notice, that planer mate I had an issue. So I don't need it anymore. Why? Because it's fixed. So I can go ahead and now right click and delete that planer. I do not need it anymore. And again, the reason being is because it's fixed. And this gear, the smaller gear, is also mated with the Revolut Mate to that bearing. Okay, so we don't need that one anymore. Now, if you notice, it should rotate properly. Let's check it out. Rotating it around. Awesome. That rotates. It's not moving. But again, the idea, the gears, the purpose of gears, right, is to have one gear rotate, and it causes the other one to rotate. So again, let's just line these up again. I'm going to rotate this. That looks about right. We are actually going to be using this gear relation. It's a great tool. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this one. What you have to do is now you have to click on the Revolut Mates. But another big thing is you have to click and also change the ratio, the relation. Okay, so I'm going to click on this one, and then I'm going to click on this one, and the relation between the two are, I believe this one's actually 35 divided by 18. Let's green check. But if you notice, this didn't quite line up. Oh, there it is. Now it's going again. But what's funny is I think I entered the wrong ones, because if I slowly move it, and this is where you'll have to kind of test it out a little bit. They're moving in the right direction, right? But that's larger gears moving faster. Okay, so let's try that again. Delete, and I'm going to click on the top view. I'm going to line it up kind of how I would like it to be lined up. You can kind of rotate this one so that it looks a little bit better. This one. Okay. Gear relation. All right, so this time I'm going to still use that 35 divided by 18, or it might be 16. Let's count. I'll close this to kind of count it up. So ideally what we're doing is we're counting the number of teeth, right? I know it's a 3 diameter by a 1.5 inch diameter, but I will notice that that diameter is not particularly the one that we're going to be using for the gear ratio. So Let's start over here, and I'm counting the gears. So it's going to be 1 gear tooth, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. Cool. So it is 35. And then this one over here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So it is 35 teeth on the larger one and 18 on the smaller one. And again, we're going to use that relation for the gear relation. So click on the gear relation again. We are this time going to click on the larger one, okay, first, then the second one, and then I'll still enter in that 35 divided by 18, okay, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the green check. And let's go ahead, turn and rotate. And let's see, make sure it's going in the right direction. Rotating it kind of fast. There we go. They are going in the right direction. So if you notice your gears are not rotating, like if they're rotating in the wrong direction, you can just double click on this gear ratio again, and you can reverse direction. So I'll just do it and you can see what happens. So now when I do that, if you notice, they're not rotating in the right, they're both rotating in the same direction, but that's not how those gears would really function, okay? So double click on it, click on reverse direction, and again, click on the green check. You'll notice when you are rotating it, you have to move kind of your mouse slowly, you'll notice that it doesn't fully take into account if there's conflicts, okay? So you can start to modify it. Mine were partly probably due to a slight dimension that is off. But as long as you have it working properly and moving properly, then you are good to go. Nothing else is moving out of its spot. The gears are moving in the correct direction. And that works. Yeah, it looks like my gear ratio is off a little because if you notice now, they're meshing well. But the initial one is, as I keep spinning them, it's off a little bit, okay? But again, don't worry about that right now. Right now, our purpose was to kind of build 2 gears, understand the different sizes of the teeth, how to create that pattern, and then also assemble it together and use some of the new tools in the assembly to create a gear train.